Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write for the Chicago Reader, and I am also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. Co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and now co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast with Max Koval.
Yay!
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very cool.
And you can hear Evan right now, because their latest
That's
episode you are on.
Yep. Yeah, we did our first episode. It was a transition episode. John Gilpatrick, who is the co-host, is departing, and we thought it would be a good transition episode for me to join with him and Max, and we talked about the Oscars quite extensively from top to bottom.
Yes, you did. I listened to that episode, and you got into the nitty-gritty. It's good stuff. And speaking of the Oscars, if you're a patron, go check out our bonus episode. Every week we put them out for $5 a month. You get access to them as well as all of our back catalog of bonus episodes. And we talk about the Oscars. We talk about the winners. We talk about if we were happy about who won, who we think should have won.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lively conversation. So go check it out. And if you're not a patron, consider joining.
Please consider.
Yes.
It's like, please, sir, may I have some more? Please consider.
Have some more bonus content.
Yes. Yes, you may. All right. Well, this week we have 3 movies we're talking about. We're going to be talking about Love Lies Bleeding, Stopmotion, and Frida. And first up, I'm going to briefly talk about Love Lies Bleeding because I am the only one who got to see it, had the pleasure of seeing it, because it came out already in New York and LA, and it comes out today in theaters nationwide. It is directed by Rose Glass. It's a queer crime thriller with a lot of neo-noir elements. It's also written by Rose Glass and Veronica Tofilska, and it stars Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien. It co-stars Ed Harris, Jenna Malone, and Dave Franco. And so here is the synopsis. An electric new love story. Reclusive gym manager Lou falls hard for Jackie, an ambitious bodybuilder headed through town to Vegas in pursuit of her dream. But their love ignites violence, pulling them deep into the web of Lou's criminal family. So I loved this. I thought this was absolutely riveting from start to finish. It's really disturbing. It's really gory.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah. It's
Well,
Living
it's
is
called Love
bleeding
Lies
in the
Bleeding.
name.
Yeah.
It is called Love Lies Bleeding, and Rose Glass did do the phenomenal horror film Saint Maud. So I was expecting horror elements, and it's not a horror film. But there are very much horror elements, and there's a lot of there's a very disturbing scene where Katie O'Brien's character is the bodybuilder, Jackie, and she beats someone to death. And they're so beaten that their jaw is hanging off the dead body.
Ooh.
It's intense. Yeah. So this movie is, like I said, very intense. The scenes of gore are very gory, very visceral. It's really great to see Kristen Stewart, who is bisexual in real life, play a lesbian character here. Katie O'Brien is, I believe, a lesbian. She's definitely queer, but I believe a lesbian. And in the film, she plays a bisexual character, and they talk about that. So the film addresses biphobia and misogyny, domestic violence. It's dealing with a lot of heavy issues, and Jenna Malone is Kristen Stewart's sister in the film, and she is a victim of domestic violence. Luckily, you never see it happening, but you definitely see her very bruised, very battered face, which is unnerving and extremely triggering. But yeah, this is an intense ride. This is quite a dynamic, riveting film. And Katie O'Brien and Kristen Stewart are both excellent in this. They have such palpable chemistry. It was really great to see them together. But it reminded me a lot of Bound, and how it's a really kind of messy, not easy queer love story, noir, crime film. And I love that we get to see some complicated, messy queer characters here. And it definitely leans into its vengeance, revenge story. And then it kind of it builds to this very out there climax, which is very interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of striking visuals, really haunting, kind of ethereal score by Clint Mansell. Really great. I really loved this.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I was already interested to see it, but I feel like I'm even more interested to see it now that you've given me a taste of what's in store.
Yeah. It's really, it's a fascinating film, and yeah, it's intense. I liked it, and I hope you do too. But yeah, let's talk about Stop Motion. It is a horror film that mixes live action and stop motion animation. It's written and directed by Robert Morgan in his feature-length debut, and it's also written by Robin King, and it stars Aisling Franciosi. Let me give you the synopsis from the press release. It's about a stop-motion animator struggling to control her demons after the loss of her overbearing mother. Suddenly alone in the world, she embarks upon the creation of a macabre new puppet film, which soon becomes the battleground for her sanity. As her mind starts to fracture, the characters in her animated film take on a terrifying life of their own, and the unleashed power of her imagination threatens to destroy her. This premiered at Fantastic Fest last year, and it's in theaters now, and it's going to be on VOD as of today. Dave and I saw this. Dave, what did you think of this?
There's a theme we keep coming back to within the last few months on Spoiler Piece Theater, and that is that I hate everything, and I fucking hated this. Hated. I don't think as much as you hated American Dreamer last week, Megan, because I think this thing does have... I like the stop motion animation in it.
Yeah, that's great.
But I just kind of think this story, kind of reminded me of Barbarian Film Studio. I think that's what it's called, with Toby Jones a little bit. All that movie I liked a lot. Just this whole idea of, a character with an overbearing parent or authority figure, and then something happens to the authority figure and they're left on their own, and then they lose their fucking mind. And I'll just tell you, there's a moment in this movie, and I don't know whether this conversation that, is it Ella or Emma? It's Ella, right?
Ella,
I don't
yes.
know if Ella has this conversation with her mother after her mother has had the stroke, or if she imagines this conversation. But her mother says to her, there are, people who are puppets and people who are puppeteers, and you're a puppet, and everyone's always pulling your strings. And I just thought to myself, if this movie ends with her getting in a goddamn box, that's the first thing I thought. And then the movie ends with her getting into a fucking box. I swear to God, just like everything in this is so predictable. It's so predictable. Like the little girl who's like actually like, imagine an angel and a devil on the shoulder, but there's no angel. Like from the moment that kid shows up, it's like, Figment? I think so.
Absolutely. It's very
and
obvious.
just really rote and predictable. And then the body horror just wasn't even interesting to me. It was just gross. Like at least with, David Cronenberg, you're getting a penis for no reason appearing underneath someone's arm. I mean, why not? In this, it's just like, oh, there's a cut in my leg, so let me just rip it open. Just fuck. And then the other thing was, I don't know if the ghost child or imagined child or whatever she is was supposed to imply that there was some sort of abuse in Ella's past with the whole... on the first night, the man comes. On the second night, he sees her. On the third night, he touches her. And it's like, well, okay, you've teed that up. Now, where's the payoff? Oh, there is no payoff. Fuck you. I just wretched. Just fucking wretched. So anyway, this is the part where you tell me that you loved it.
No, I didn't love
good.
it.
Right.
I did not.
Oh, I just say real quick, I am not usually grossed out
Yeah.
by scenes of like raw meat, but every shot of raw meat in this movie is fucking disgusting. So whether it's just a raw steak lying on a plate, or it's like turned into puppetry. So anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I will say I've seen raw. I'm also repulsed by raw meat, or I am repulsed by raw meat. I've seen it done in other films better. Like I think of Julia Ducournau's Raw. So, but yes, yeah, no, I did not love this, but I did not hate it, and nor did I dislike it. I think it's fine. Like I think it's okay. I think that Aisling Franciosi is an excellent actress. I really particularly love her work in Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale. I think she's really great in God's Creatures, which we covered on the show. I think either last year or a couple years ago. And I think she gives a really great performance as a woman who is, her sanity is unraveling, her reality is unraveling, and she's trying to find her voice and to find her distinctiveness as an artist and assert herself. I think there's something there. And I think the visuals are really creepy. I like the unnerving atmosphere, kind of this hallucinatory element. You said something to the effect, Dave, like as far as there's no payoff. And that's what I kept feeling. Like I kept feeling like it was about to get going. It was about to start up. It kept feeling like it was ramping up, about to get to something, but never does. It never really truly explores anything. We never really learn anything about her. Yeah, so it feels like it's constantly like grinding, like spinning its wheels and grinding its gears, and it just never gets to any place where you really dive deep into what Ella is going through or what she's experienced, or like it's very disorienting. And I think it does a decent job at that. But for me, I kept yearning for something deeper. Like, what is the film trying to say? What are we supposed to take away from her? What are we supposed to learn about her? Why is this happening? Is it just because her mother was overbearing? Because wouldn't, as soon as her mother like went into the coma or had the stroke and then died, like wouldn't that have gone away? Like, I don't know. It just seems strange. Like, are we supposed to take away that she can't handle being on her own? Like,
I don't know.
It's very weird. So yeah, so I think there's the germ of a good idea here. I think there are really good elements here. I think, like I said, I think Aisling Franciosi is great. I really love the stop motion animation too. It's really creepy. It reminded me a lot of Mad God, which I loved. But yeah, I needed more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I needed a whole lot more. Fuck.
Was there anything else, Dave, that like in particular really bothered you, or that you liked, or anything else?
No, I just it was, the whole thing was so off-putting, mostly from a story perspective. Just like the absolute absence of backstory is just fucking killer in this.
Yeah. And it's funny because you don't always need backstory.
Correct.
But I think here you do. You definitely do.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like, what's the point? Why is this happening? What's going on?
Yeah. I kind of feel that way about Mad God to a degree, but at the same time, it's like, well, this is kind of Phil Tippett's bag. So why not let him run with it?
Right. And see, to me, that's so funny. And I know a lot of people who've had that experience, but to me, I actually think there's so many, like it's so weird and it's so out there that I was okay with that. But I also think that there are enough clues there that you can kind of interpret your own idea of what's happening.
Sure.
But yeah, I feel like here there's not, it needs to either lean into more gore, more weird, or give us more backstory, or both. So yeah.
Like, seriously,
I think it needs to run with the weird.
There's like a little imagined girl like pulling the strings. Like, how does that even happen?
I thought that was her. Like, I thought it was her as a young kid, but who knows?
Maybe, but also
right.
There's like no resemblance between the two of them, so I didn't really make that connection.
Yeah, no, that's true, and you would never know other than they both have brown hair.
Yeah, it did cross my mind, but I was just like, I don't really think it's, I don't know.
Right.
It's just all too fucking, it's opaque. Fuck it.
Yeah. No, I kept thinking, what's the point? What's the takeaway? But I did like a lot of this. So yeah, so I kind of felt uneven about it because I did like a lot of it. I
Oh,
think there's something here. Yes,
I
Dave.
was gonna say, I also don't believe for a minute that she would have overpowered both her ex-boyfriend and the weird
Oh,
friend.
and the sister.
I don't.
I think that was his sister. Yeah,
His sister. Okay, I
I think
didn't believe
so.
that for a minute. So
No, but
I mean, if
I
she's
guess we're supposed to suspend disbelief. I don't know.
well, if she's hopped up on goofballs, sure, maybe. But like, she doesn't have any memory of how she got home, so maybe she's tripping balls or something like that. And like, pain is but a construct,
Yeah,
So
I
I don't know.
guess. Yeah. Although, was she actually tripping? Because didn't she still have them like in her pocket or something? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, no, I thought that was weird. And like, why did was the whole thing that she was killing them in order because they were trying to stop her, or was it so she could then use their bodies to make the life-size dolls? Because she talks about with her mother, either an imaginary conversation or real, about how it's hard bringing things to life. And I'm like, oh, we're kind of getting like a Frankenstein vibe here. Okay, cool. But we, again, never really get into that. Like, is it the point that your art is, is going to drive you to the brink of insanity and kill you? Like, that art is controlling you? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. So
yeah, I think there's some good ideas here, but it needs more. Needs some more.
Yep.
More in there. All right. Any final thoughts before we move on?
No.
That sounds like a disappointing bummer that it was not what you were hoping for, either of you. Like, it had good ideas and just didn't quite bring it all together.
Yeah, I wasn't really that disappointed, surprisingly. I don't know why. I was like, yeah, it's fine. I think because I liked it more. But yeah, no, definitely for you, Dave. It seems like a hate fest disappointment. All right. Well, let's talk about Frida, the documentary about Mexican painter Frida Kahlo. We all saw this. This is directed and edited by Carla Gutierrez. This premiered at Sundance this year. And let me give you the synopsis from the press release. An intimately raw and magical journey through the life, mind, and heart of iconic artist Frida Kahlo. Frida is told through her own words for the very first time, drawn from her famed illustrated diary, revealing letters, essays, and candid print interviews, and brought vividly to life by lyrical animation inspired by her unforgettable artwork. All right, Evan, since we have not heard from you, why don't you kick things off and tell us what you thought of this documentary?
Sure. I think going into this, I knew very little about Frida Kahlo. Other than, some of her iconic artwork that often features self-portraits.
Mm-hmm.
And, surrealist settings. I didn't know anything about her life. So I was sucked in fairly quickly by this documentary, both from a visual perspective, all the really interesting animation that it was doing as it was animating her artwork, and learning the details of her life, knowing that she lived with, was in a horrible accident when she was young and had crippling pain throughout her life that ultimately she succumbed to at a young age. She was only 47 when she died. It was like really sad. And that was like a through line through the documentary of like how much pain she was in all the time. But she was like, despite all the pain and the horrible pain and the other stuff between like, a lousy, cheating asshole husband who is abusive and miscarriage, which also seems like it was just awful. And I don't know if it almost took her life, but it sounded pretty severe. That she made this like incredible artwork that was interesting and like visually just stunning. And even though it's like iconic now, she wasn't really that respected at the time while she was doing it. And I don't know, I just thought it was fascinating to me. It kept my attention. I thought the score was really good. I thought it was well edited. I loved hearing the different perspectives. They have, actors voice over, diary entries from her and also from the people in her life who knew her. And so I feel like it created a really fascinating portrait of her that felt very full. And she seemed like someone who was very dynamic and full of life, despite all of the pain that she was in, especially later in her life. So, yeah.
All right, cool. All right, Dave, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought this was pretty fascinating. I don't know if I was quite as enamored with it as Evan was, but I really liked just the approach, the archival footage, like not one single interview, which is just so unusual in a documentary. It's great.
Yeah, no talking heads here.
Yeah, and really smart use of animation kind of based on her work, and to a lesser degree her husband's work. I also really liked that this is all taken from her own words and the words of her contemporaries and people that she knew, and it gives a really rounded look at her, because she was really, really introspective, it seems. I mean, obviously, you're doing all these self-portraits and et cetera, but to also just hear her write so fluently about herself and what she was going through, and to be completely tuned in to her own life. I feel like a lot of people aren't like that.
It's true. Yeah.
And also very confident in her abilities. And I did know she had been in an accident and that she was suffered from pain forever. I didn't realize it was I don't know what I thought it was. I did not realize that she was impaled by a fucking guardrail. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That is just horrifying. And the fact that some joker just like removed it from her at the scene of the accident is insane to me. But hey, it was like 1926 or whatever. People did shit. So, and I also thought that the score was just excellent, like a really great score.
It's a stunning score. I agree with you.
It really is. Just, lyrical and moving without being overbearing, but also just like really beautiful with some great dissonance every once in a while. And then the song over the closing credits is great too. So it just kind of all fits together really, really well. I don't really have any complaints about it. I don't know if I would have gone out of my way to see it if we hadn't been doing it for the show, but I'm really glad that I saw it. So
nice. That's always a nice surprise.
Yeah.
So I love that you both loved it. And I liked it a lot too. I saw this is my second time watching it because I saw it earlier this year for Sundance. And I like it for a lot of the same reasons. I like how creative and kinetic it is. Although interestingly, there has been some criticism by critics, some critics, not all, of course, but by some about the animation, and that they feel her artwork is so dynamic in and of itself that it should just, and since it's in her own words, the whole film, the pieces should just stand on their own without animation. And I think that's a fair point. I don't necessarily agree. I like the animation. I think in a film it gives a dynamism to it that is nice. But I think that's an interesting critique. I particularly love the voice acting by Fernanda Echevarria del Rivero as Frida Kahlo. I think it is so emotive and so fantastic. I loved it. And I also love that we hear her own words, which is really cool. So I actually didn't think I knew that much about Frida Kahlo, but I actually guess I knew a lot more because one of the things was I went and saw in 2019, the MFA here in Boston had an exhibit on her work, and they also had some of her letters, and they had pieces of Mexican folk art that she had, and it basically was a collection that looked at how folk art influenced her work and kind of an evolution of her work and of her life. And it was a really emotional and impressive exhibition, and it was really stunning. And that's where I learned so much about her. So I knew about the accident and her being impaled and how she had pain. But the documentary kind of omits some things or glosses over some facets of her life that I think is kind of strange, like strange choices. Like they never talk about her polio, and she had polio when she was a kid. It kind of glosses over her relationship with Leon Trotsky, which is interesting. Like it mentions it, but she she advocated for Leon Trotsky and his wife to come to the US. And then when he was assassinated, her and her sister Christina were like questioned about the information about the assassination, and that's never touched on. Her really radical politics are not mentioned. Like you hear her in her own words talk about how the rich people in the US are dumb and they're stupid and they waste their time and they talk about stupid things, but she was really vocal about capitalism, and she was very much anti-capitalist. She was very much a socialist, very much had feminist politics, and that's kind of not in this at all. And like she went to a protest right before she died that like exacerbated her detrimental health because she was at this protest. And so like that's not in there at all. And so that's strange to me. I do love that the film, excuse me, I do love that the film has that she's bisexual in it because she was. But again, it still feels kind of like it's glossed over. And she had numerous relationships with men and women. And I think it's also kind of strange that it's not really talked about more because gender was such a huge part of her artwork. Like there are so many pieces of her art that show her, like there's a self-portrait that shows her we see in the film where she's dressed in a suit and with short hair and her haircut. And some people speculate that that is because of her divorce from Diego Rivera, but other people think it has to do with her bisexuality. So it's interesting that, like, again, the way it's edited, which I do think it's edited very well, but the way it's edited, it makes it seem like, oh, this painting is in response to her heartbreak from Diego Rivera, which it could be, but it could also be because she's bucking gender norms or because of her sexuality. And so the fact that she is such a radical figure politically, and advocated throughout her entire life for social justice, it's strange to me that that is not really focused on here. Like it focuses more on her relationship with Diego Rivera and her need to paint, which is of course vital. But it's just it's just kind of like knowing what I know about her, and I don't even know that much. It's just kind of strange to me. But having said all that, I think this is an excellent introduction, and I think this is a really fascinating documentary, and it was a pleasure to revisit it. Like, you know, I don't always love documentaries. I do not like rewatching them for the most part, but this was actually quite a joy to revisit. So all in all, I did really like it. I just think there's some strange choices as to why I think certain things were left out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds like some pretty key info.
Yeah. I mean, I would say yes.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Your comment about her wearing the suit, I think so. Like early in the film, when they're talking about her early life, and they're talking about how she ran with that crew of guys that were kind of like mischievous. You see photos of her rocking short hair, or at least her hair is tied back in a suit. So I'm almost wondering if the post breakup suit was kind of like, in addition to bucking, gender norms and trends, also just kind of like, I'm taking myself back, like I'm kind of like coming back into my own again after being with someone who kind of like really stifled me and prevented me from being my like full self. Because there was a scene or a bit earlier on when she was talking about, I don't know if she was talking about, or it was a friend of hers was talking about how like she got together with him and she started wearing more like dresses and more like traditional like feminine clothing than she was before. So maybe it's a response of like reclaiming her true self and her true identity, that painting that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, sir, that's very possible. It's interesting that you mentioned the traditional Mexican garb, because I was thinking about that too, but in kind of a slightly different context. because she also everything she did was very intentional, just from what I've learned about her. And that clothing, she very intentionally wore traditional Mexican clothing to kind of not promote, but to show her Mexican pride, but also very specifically it was indigenous clothing. And so that was an intentional choice. It wasn't just or solely the fact that she wanted to be more feminine, but also is making a statement. So yeah, but it's very possible that that's what was happening. Like I said, I am by no means any expert on her art or an art historian at all. But yeah, great observation though.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. But I think her artwork is fascinating, and I love her art. I love it so much. It's so vivid. It's so visceral. It's shocking in certain pieces. Like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I haven't seen enough of her art to really have a strong opinion about it. But what I have seen, I'm like, yeah, this is right up my alley. So.
Yeah, like I'm also surprised. Sorry, like thinking about something else that the documentary kind of glosses over. I'm kind of surprised it glosses over the importance of Casa Azul, the blue house, which is where her and Diego Rivera both lived. But after they separated, or maybe it was even before they separated, he had another studio that he worked at, but she lived there and really did her work. And that's where, like, she really, when you were saying came into her own, that's really where she came into her own artistically and independently, like when she became financially independent. So I don't know, but like it's like that building has become that's a museum now. So again, it's kind of interesting to me that that's not talked about, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that's like, people, if they don't know a lot about her, they might know that just because it's a museum too. So I don't know. It's interesting, but she's a fascinating person, an artist.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, just makes me want to like learn even more about her and read more and see more of her art. Which I feel like that's what like the best documentaries do, is if they make you want to dig deeper and delve into more.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Yeah, that is the mark of a good documentary. You're so captivated about the subject, you're like, okay, let me go learn more about this on my own.
Yeah. So as I was reading about the making of this, so I believe this is Carla Gutierrez's first film as a director, because she's an editor, and she worked on Betsy West and Julie Cohen's documentaries, editing them. Like she did RBG, and she did Julia, which both of which we've talked about and are great documentaries. And she was taken aback that despite the fact that Julie Taymor has the Frida biopic, and there have been other documentaries about Frida Kahlo, there was nothing that was really taught, like nothing focused on her writing and her own words. And so that's why she wanted to make this documentary. And I really love that, because she was such a prolific writer, which is kind of cool, because I don't think that's something people really think about when they think of her.
Exactly. And to what, you were saying before, Dave, she had a very strong sense of herself, and that comes through in her writing and the way that she talks about herself. Like, I think early on in the documentary, she makes a comment like, I paint myself because that's what I know best. And it's like, yeah, that you have to have a very strong sense of self. You have to have confidence, because like, as someone, who grew up very interested in art, and for a little while when I was a kid thought I wanted to be an artist, one of the toughest things to do is self-portraits, both because they're just difficult on their own, but you need to have the confidence in yourself to be painting and drawing yourself. You need to like have confidence to put your own image out there in the world. And so I think that takes a lot of guts to do.
That's such a great point. I'm so glad you said that, because I hadn't really thought about that. Like, I think about it as you have to have some confidence to put your art out there, but to do it. But the fact, I hadn't really thought about like, self-portraits are more difficult in the sense of relating to confidence. So I love that you said that. Thank you for sharing that. That was so cool.
Yeah. It was just something that just came to me as we were talking about it. I'm like, yeah, that is really tough to do. You like it's not easy to draw yourself, to paint yourself. Like technically it's not, unless you're a good artist. But then there's also like the like any other piece of art, you're putting yourself out there, and you can't put yourself any more out there than literally putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, not only that, but she painted herself sometimes, nude or
Right.
partially nude, and she's showing her body in pain, and she's showing all of these internal feelings. And that's why I also think it's really fascinating, like when Andre Breton came and saw her work and was like, oh, you're a surrealist, because this is what surrealism is. But she's like, no, I'm actually, like, later on, she's like, actually, I'm not a surrealist, because, I'm not dealing with dreams. This is my reality. And so it is so vulnerable of her to, put herself out there, her naked body, her body in pain, all of the things that she's done, her miscarriage, like her accident, like all of these things. Like it's really, it does take not only a strong sense of self and a confidence, but there's a bravery to it and a vulnerability, which is really impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Braver than I am.
She was a fascinating person. It's sad that she died so young.
Yeah, it is really sad. Very like acerbic and sharp wit. I really did enjoy a lot of her commentary. The way she
Me
just
too.
like had things to say about like the upper crust, even about the other artists when she's like, the surrealism. I forget exactly what she said. Something along the lines of surrealism is the decadent manifestation of everything bourgeoisie or something like it was like very critical of and she's also very critical at several points in the documentary about the patriarchy and like the art world and how male dominated it is and how male dominated the world in general is.
Yep.
So
she's super critical of the US and like of homelessness and excess, and talking about how she wants to get back to Mexico and how beautiful it is there. Yeah. No, I loved how critical she was of everything. And I'm like, yep, I'm right there. I agree with you. Yep.
She struck me as someone that didn't really pull any punches in person either. Like these thoughts were in her head, but I got the sense that she was not shy about sharing them if asked.
Or possibly even if not asked.
Yeah.
Just giving it out. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I also think what's really fascinating, and you're right, you both said this, talking about the pain. And Evan, I think you specifically said that the kind of the through line of the documentary is how much pain she was enduring throughout almost her entire life. I think what's interesting, though, is that, and much to the film's credit, which I really love, is that she doesn't, and to her credit too, of course, she doesn't, as much as she complains about the pain and she talks about the pain, she doesn't shy away from it. She also very much revels in pleasure and in joy, and talks about how important pleasure is, whether it's in sex or in love or in colors and painting and seeing the world. And I love that. And I think that's such a necessary balm if you've had such, traumatic experiences or difficulties in life. If you're dealing with chronic pain, I would argue everybody needs joy, but you especially in those moments, you need to find joy and pleasure and to really lean into that. And so it was really nice that we get to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I fear before that I made it seem like, she was talking a lot about her pain. It's just like it just so much was a part of her life that was
of course
sad. It was it was but she did, find pleasure and hold on to it and seek it out. And I was agreeing with what you're saying before about how it felt kind of like almost like rushed when it was talking about her relationships with other people. Like it happened so fast on screen that I was like, wait a minute, back it up. Georgia O'Keeffe? Wait, what?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I like that the film doesn't shy away from the fact that she had lots of relationships, and Diego Rivera did too. Like, they both had lots of lovers. They had lots of relationships outside of, while they were married to each other, as well as outside of their marriage. But it's like, why are we, she is a queer artist. Why are we just skipping? Like, it was a very integral part of her identity. Like, why are we just skipping over these relationships? Like, I want to know more about them.
It could have been a little longer, I think, perhaps.
I agree.
This is a relatively short documentary. It's like 80 something minutes, right? I feel like we could have gotten like a little bit more here.
I agree. I wonder if, because Gutierrez is an editor, I wonder if she was like, we got to get in and get out. You know what I mean? Like, didn't want to overstay her welcome. But yeah, no, I agree. I think this film could have easily been longer because it's well paced and it's really interesting. It didn't feel, sometimes you watch something and even though it's only like 80 or 90 minutes, you're like, oh my God, this is dragging. Like, I didn't feel that way at all with this. So I agree. I think it could have been an extra like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I think it would have been great. Because I wanted to know more too. I'm like, let's get into it. Yeah. But then I also think like maybe she didn't talk about maybe because this is her diary. Maybe she was brief, on maybe her other relationships.
Because there wasn't more that she
said. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I do wonder that too. Like, because this isn't a documentary in the sense of, we're going to cover all these facets of her life. Like, maybe it's just focusing on what she wrote about. So
right.
Yeah.
Although maybe she would be like questioned by the stupid fucking Americans over Trotsky.
I know, right? That's why I'm surprised there's nothing about that. I'm sure she had things to say. Yeah, I know. This is a weird thing to say, but I think you guys will know what I mean. It kind of reminds me of the documentary on Brian De Palma, how I don't always love Brian De Palma's films, but he's such a fascinating person that I could just sit and listen to him talk about films or really anything for a length of time. And I feel like I could have just sat and listened to her talk or read her diary. I could just, sit and listen to everything she has to say about art and politics and life and kind of everything.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
I was going to say, I haven't seen De Palma's documentary, but I understand the sentiment that someone could be interesting enough. It's not unlike when we watched the William Friedkin talk about the Exorcist documentary, where it's like literally just William Friedkin looking at the camera talking about the Exorcist, and that was interesting enough that I had my attention. So yeah, we could have special guest lecturer Frida Kahlo. Please have the floor to tell me about your life.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It was nice to see this too, because it just reminded me of that phenomenal exhibit I saw. And now I want to go see all of her art, like kind of everywhere. Like, I want to see more. It's so good. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the film?
I'm glad you filled in gaps that I didn't know were gaps. So I'll be more interested to read up on her.
Yeah, I was like, and there's probably more that like I said, I don't know a lot. So there's probably even a lot more that I don't know. So.
Yeah. Sometimes I take the documentary at face value and forget that there's also, someone edited this and they made choices about the stuff they're going to include or not include, just like you would if you were making a narrative about, a biopic about Frida Kahlo. Of course. You're not going to cover everything, and you might leave stuff out. You might gloss some stuff over, etc.
Yeah. And, maybe the stuff that she left out, she wanted to because it didn't feed that narrative that she, wanted to tell. So you're absolutely right. All right, well, let's do a recap. So Love Lies Bleeding is in theaters now. I would highly recommend it. It's incredible. Stopmotion is in theaters and on VOD. Dave, I think it's safe to say you would say pass.
Boo.
Nice with the thumbs down.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say you have to skip it. I also don't think it's a must see. I think it's fine. If you're really a horror fan and you want to be a completionist, sure, see it. And it's a great lead performance, but I don't think you need to rush out to see it. So it's my very wishy-washy recommendation.
Yeah, sounds like you thought it through.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And then Frida is on Prime Video now. And I think it's safe to say all three of us would recommend it. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Yep.
I would too. It's a really fascinating and well done documentary. All right. Well, thank you so much to our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
And we want to give another huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clammer. Thank you, Otto, for everything you do to make us sound great.
Thanks, Otto.
Thank you, Otto.
And you can get Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. You can also find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We're all over the place. We're at Spoiler Piece on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads. Yes. So come follow us, say hello. Let us know what you think of these movies. And speaking of, you can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
You can text us, leave us a voicemail message. Let us know we're dead wrong about Stop Motion and it is the best movie of the year. Or you too also liked Frida like we did. Let us know what you think. And if you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us. You can do that by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. We'll take you to a preferred platform of choice. You can also rate us directly at Apple Podcasts. That helps us out a lot. You can also rate us over on Spotify. If you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon if you're not a patron already. Like I said at the top of the show, this week we talked about the Oscars. We talked about Oscar winners and whether we agreed or whether we would have liked someone else or another film to have won. It was a lively conversation, as they usually are. So for $5 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes, and you also get access to our back catalog of hundreds of bonus episodes. And you get to vote in monthly polls, which we will have a poll coming up very soon. So look out for that. And if you are already a patron, thank you so much for your patronage. And thank you for listening. My name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm also a co-host of the Slashers podcast, a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Opinion S World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write for the Chicago Reader. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, Threads, Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast. You can follow me on social media as Real Recon, and you can check out It's the Pictures wherever you get podcasts.
And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.